The following is a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. It's your midweek fix for racing news and information. Brought to you by the Championship Racing Network. Now let's head trackside to join your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson. Welcome into mid-March. I'm having a hard time believing I just said that. Middle of March already. And all the series that we cover on a regular basis have got their season underway officially now. When it comes to this weekend, Formula One finally going to get their season underway, and that'll be them. So, yeah, very, very interesting. But in today's podcast, we're not worried about looking ahead right now. We want to look back a little bit. I want to look back at Phoenix. And three topics that we really want to deal with today. First of all, that option tire. We talked about it on the big show last Saturday. Pardon me, as I still have a little bit of the remnants of that voice problem I had a week and a half ago. Is the option tire a success? That's the question. I got to admit, I like the idea of kind of putting everybody into the whole strategy call. And we saw kind of different ways of doing things. Like we saw that penalty from Joey Logano at the very beginning of the race there, where he dipped below the down onto the apron before he was fully across the start finish line. And that shot him way back. So they turned around and got the option tire out early, which brought him back up through the field, and he was able to stay at or near the front of the field for the rest of the afternoon. We saw Ryan Preece take a car that was, call it what you want. I've heard some people call it a 25th place car. I thought it was more like a 15th place car. But he led, 40-something laps because
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, in the second stage, they put him on those tires, and he rocketed to the front, and he was out there for a long time. So before we get into the details of should they change the option tire, is the option tire a success? Is this doing what NASCAR and Goodyear and all these drivers and crew chiefs are hoping for? Or is it kind of an experiment that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't?
I'm going to go the former instead of the latter.
Okay. And I'm with you there. I think it's doing what they're looking for it to do by and large, but it does need to be tweaked, and we're going to get into that here in a second.
Yeah, it's got room to have a little bit of improvement. It could probably have a little bit quicker fall off because 60 laps at Phoenix, it should fall off a little bit quicker when it really was not falling off.
Yeah. Okay. So you and I agree. This is a success of a program. It's just we need to find that really good balance, and that you went right into where I was going to go with this, in the fact that 60 laps. This is a mile-long track. This is the longest track that this option tire has ever run on, and it kind of goes back to the first time we saw this really soft, quote-unquote, gumball-ish kind of tire that Goodyear said that they were going to bring in North Wilkesboro in the All-Star race in the first year of its repave, and it lasted the entire time. So they said, okay, we need to go softer. Somewhere down the line, they went from being that softer tire at a place like Martinsville, and they hardened the compound back up when they came to Phoenix. Why?
You really needed a mirror of that compound that you saw at Bristol last year. That's what you needed.
I could agree with that too.
To have serious fall off that you did, not serious, but the fall off that you're looking for. That's what you need to have something maybe not that severe, maybe just a fraction harder, where it still has a lot of give up. But I was a little bit surprised that they was able to make them run 60-ish laps on the softer tire.
Yeah.
And by the time when the softer tire kind of, I guess you could say, kind of equalized itself out, there wasn't all that much fall off from that. versus the fall off of the regular main primary.
Yeah.
So, and then the field kind of leveled back out, and everybody had the same aspect of it, to where we're gonna keep one set in our back pocket for the last run, split the final
Sure.
stage in half, which makes sense.
Absolutely.
But if you're going to give them they give them option tire, give them they have to use, either only give them one set for the whole race and that's it, or they have to use one set per stage. Instead of having two sets, use
Okay.
three sets.
Yeah. I
It's
see where you're going with that.
You have to use one set per stage. Kind of where the tire rule goes in F1, you've got to use all three set of compounds at least one time in the race.
Mhm.
Make it to where you have to use that soft compound at least one time in each stage.
Yeah.
Period.
And you and I have been really kind of on the same page when it comes to this tire, because in watching the other series, I mean, obviously the NHRA it sits out on its own. Formula E is too short. I mean, they barely change tires, for crying out loud. But you look at Formula One, you look at IndyCar, both of them have, in the case of Formula One, 3 compounds of tires. They have to choose at least and use at least 2 of them, and they would prefer you use all 3. IndyCar, you have an option tire. You have the black wall, which is what NASCAR would call the primary, the yellow lettered tire. And then they have a red stripe tire. That's the same thing as the option tire, which is red lettered in NASCAR. And they mandate you have to use it. They don't state where in the race you have to use it. You can use it at the beginning of the race if you choose to use it at the beginning of the race, but you have to use both compounds at some point in time.
Right.
And I don't have any problem with that mandate. And I like the fact that there was a strategy call there. And that, I think, is the important part of this, is that this does bring in a bit of a strategy call here. But even more importantly, I'm a fan of this tire because, to me, this puts the race much more into the driver's hands. You and I have talked about this car. You and I have both seen this car up close and personal. These cars are tanks. We've listened to the drivers over the course of time, and they have said this is not the easiest car to drive. Even retired drivers like Carl Edwards, who we're going to talk about again on the big show on Saturday, have said, yeah, I kind of feel like I got out at the right time based upon what I've heard. But if somebody wants to put me in a simulator to give me an idea of what this new generation of Cup Series car is like, I'd love to give it a shot, so that I have some sort of frame of reference to it, which I'd be surprised if somebody didn't give him a shot at a simulator, be it Ford, where he was for a long time, or Toyota, where he wrapped up his career. But in the grand scheme of things, if you're going to put things into the hands of the driver, you have to give them a variable that makes them have to work harder. And tires are probably the easiest way to do that. If you give them a bulletproof tire, they're just going to run forever and ever. You got to give them a tire that, even if it falls off, it doesn't necessarily have to fall off a cliff, but it's got to fall off enough to the point where the driver now suddenly feels, I either have to remember this the next round so that I take care of my tires better so they last longer, or maybe we're going to have to pit under green.
Yeah, it had to do something. Because looking back on it, looking back on it, if there had not have been a speeding penalty committed by the certain state individual, this race was falling literally right into his lap.
Sure.
Ty Dillon.
Oh, yeah.
It was falling
Strangely
right
enough,
into his lap.
And you and I have said flat out, we're not any real big fans of Ty Dillon, but we got to give credit where it's due.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the call and the strategy got played out like it needed to, until he goofed and made his mistake on pit road, which is not surprising, but still, if he hadn't have, it was playing right into his lap.
Right.
Because of how they split the last final stage up. And he was going to be on the freshest set of options to end the race.
Yep. He was going to be in real good position. Okay. So you and I pretty much are in agreement that we feel like the tweak that they need to do is they need to get that tire to the point where it falls off better. Does that mean it needs to be softer?
Make it softer to where the point it doesn't come apart too quick. That can be done. It's a fine line you have to walk. A very fine line you have to walk.
Yeah, and we've seen them do this. I mean, we've seen them get a really, really good tire going that lasted. Did you get the real good part of it out of there? It only lasted, what, 25, 30 laps, and then we started to see it go away.
Right.
That's not bad. At a Phoenix, maybe you can make it last 40 because, you know, as opposed to a short track, you're not necessarily cranking in the wheel as much. But, you know, Phoenix is kind of a weird little duck when it comes to how it's, you know, how the turns are and everything. So, yeah, I mean, what lasts 25 to 30 laps at a Bristol might last 40 at a Phoenix, maybe. I don't know.
It could be done. You just have to just find it. I mean,
Yeah.
where that line may be, I don't know. You've got to just find it.
So the other one more note on this before we move on to topic number 2. Is this a tire? Is this something that we're going to see when we come back for the championship race at Phoenix? Or are they going to look at this and go, yeah, we're probably just going to go with one compound?
I'm all but sure that it'll be back for the final race. I'm all but certain it will be.
Hopefully with the tweaks that we were talking about.
Hopefully. I mean, they were spending 2 days yesterday, Monday and yesterday doing like 10-hour tests for Goodyear at Phoenix with each manufacturer. And hopefully they found that line somewhere.
Yeah, hopefully they did. Obviously, they're not going to tell anybody. That's just one of those things we're going to have to find out later. Next time we see that tire is going to be Martinsville, I presume?
I think so. Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
And it needs to come back more often. As often as they can do it. I mean, certain tracks, you're never going to see it up to about a mile long, but you're probably never going to see it at a Dover. New Hampshire, I think we could see it there, obviously. Maybe, and this is a huge maybe, Darlington, but Darlington chews up tires already. I'm not so certain you're going to put a really ultra soft compound tire there.
Bristol, Martinsville, Richmond, Iowa, New Hampshire, Gateway, Phoenix.
Okay. Would you ever consider, when we've got 6 of them on the schedule, would you consider taking a softer compound tire, if not necessarily the short track tire? Would you consider taking an option tire of some compound to a road course?
Oh, I thought you was about to say super speedway.
No.
Maybe Sonoma.
Okay.
Maybe Sonoma.
Mm-hmm. Just to try
it? Just to try it because it doesn't have any really serious high-speed sections like Watkins Glen, like Coda, like the Roval.
Yeah, and we can probably eliminate the Roval too because of the banking in those corners. NASCAR 1, 2, and 3, and 4.
You really can't say Mexico City because you don't know how the cars are going to react at Mexico City.
Yeah. So I certainly wouldn't do it there yet. But, you know, at some point in time, I think you try and do something that brings this out to as many different kinds of tracks as you can, because we as fans of this series and of NASCAR, we would like to see this much more in the hands of the drivers than it has been.
So it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and exactly right. So this is one of those ways to put it back into the driver's hands and let's go see who's the better driver. And playing a little bit of strategy, that's going to allow the crew chief to actually kind of stop and think about it and have a little bit more to do than go full fuel and 4 tires, or this is only going to be a 2-tire stop, or this is only going to be a gas and go. This gives them more to do than just that. This gives them something to think about. Hey, should we roll the dice here and try and get some track position, or we want to hold these option tires in our pocket? So I like that. And I think that that's the way that it should be much more.
Yeah.
Secondly, late in the race, 8 laps to go, Phoenix on Sunday evening, I believe it was Ty Gibbs blew a rotor and it brought out a caution.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get back to green flag racing until it was a green, white, checkered. Now, I get the fact that blowing a rotor means you probably got pieces that are strewn about a little bit. But you can't tell me that it took the safety crew 6 full plus laps to clean up the track from a single car incident. You cannot tell me that.
It's called milking it out and manufacturing a finish, which is absurd.
Agreed.
That's what that is. Because that brake rotor is not going to fragment into that many pieces. I know what a broken brake rotor will do.
Mhm.
I've experienced a broken brake rotor. A brake rotor is not going to fragment into so many pieces that you have to go, ooh, there's one. Ooh, there's another. Ooh, here's another one on the entry to 3. Here's this. No, you're not going to have that happen. It's nothing that a stinking jet dryer or a jet blower cannot blow off to the apron of the track and get it so far off of the apron to where it doesn't interfere with the service of the race cars.
Yeah.
Simply put.
Caution flags are a bugaboo here with us on this show. I know we've been talking about it for a while. Do you throw the caution? Do you not? I get it. For a blown brake rotor, absolutely you want to throw the caution there. You've got metal on the track. That can cause severe problems for tires and,
Sure.
you know, cause somebody else to blow a tire and boom, they end up hitting somebody else, maybe cause a big one. So no, we don't have a problem with them having thrown the caution here. The length of the caution is what bothers us. And when we're that late in the race, and I don't care whether you're MRN or PRN, the radio affiliates, or even the IRN radio, you know, Indianapolis Radio Network, which is going to cover the Brickyard. I don't care which radio network you are. And I certainly don't care which TV network you are. Fox, NBC, when we get to it later this year, TNT, when we get to Amazon Prime. You can't sit there and tell me that they haven't already dealt with and gotten their commercial breaks out of the way just on the off chance that for the last 15, maybe even 20 laps, we might go caution free.
True.
You and I have seen this. We know that that's the case. They're done with their commercials that are scheduled for within side of the race. They're done by that point in time. It's not that they're waiting on their TV or radio partners to come back from break.
Right. Right. It's milking and manufacturing finishes.
Exactly.
That's why and somebody they was onto it when they said it. What is this turning into? Is it turning into stock car racing or turning into WWE manufacturing finishes?
Stop manufacturing the finish.
Stupid. Let it play out on the racetrack.
Exactly. There is enough drama on the racetrack already for us to be very, very happy with the end product. Let it play out. If it turns out that somebody actually gets a 3-second lead by the end of the race, well, you know what? Congratulations to them. But the way that things were going, we weren't going to be seeing that at Phoenix.
Nope. Not even close.
All right. I keep apologizing because I have to mute myself and get the coughing out. All right. One more note, and we talked about this, and first things first. A favorite punching bag of ours ever since she first stepped into a Cup Series car was Danica Patrick. Because we honestly felt like Danica Patrick was not going to be that good inside a Cup car, and as it turned out, she wasn't. But things over the course of time have kind of happened, and we've seen some drivers come and go. Hailie Deegan, we can sit there and talk about how popular she was, but at the same point in time, she didn't really perform on the track. Tony Breidinger is now trying to come up through the system. Amber Balkan is there in the ARCA Menard series. But last Sunday at Phoenix, for the first time since 2018, when Danica Patrick started that year's Daytona 500, we had a female start a Cup Series race. It was Cathrine Legge. Now, Cathrine Legge, 44 years old, very, very accomplished racer, very successful in her time in doing varying different series, and has several IndyCar starts to her credit. But despite the fact that she actually has a handful of Xfinity Series starts, you and I kind of questioned, why did she get a Cup Series start at Phoenix? I mean, a Cup Series start at COTA, I might have been able to understand because that's what she's done in Xfinity competition. She's run road courses by and large. I would have understood if it had been a Coda or coming up a little bit later on when we go to Mexico City or go to Sonoma. Why Phoenix?
I wish I had the answer to that. I really wish I had the answer to that. You know, and there's been multiple other competitors that were actually on the racetrack with her that says they have zero fault at her. Zero fault at her.
Right.
They are absolutely lambasting and absolutely roasting, whatever you want to call it. They are hammering the sanctioning body and the competition department going,
Right.
why are we allowing these people to start cup races that have no experience in these cup cars that are like a dart without feathers because they literally don't have anything? She's never sat in a cup car. All the laps she had before the race was 25 minutes worth of practice, one qualifying lap. Hope you have fun. Hope you survive.
Yeah.
That's pointless.
As we talked about just a moment ago, these cars are probably the most difficult Cup Series cars to drive of all the generations of Cup Series cars that there have been.
Ever.
And then you're going to take somebody who is literally as green as they can possibly be, and you're going to hamstring them. Okay. Now, first things first, she's in a Rick Ware racing car.
BJ McLeod.
I'm sorry, BJ McLeod's car. Might as well be in a Rick Ware racing car. Okay. Because neither one of those two cars have a record of success that they can hang their hats on. Okay. So she's in a backmarker car to begin with. She's in a car that she really has zero experience in whatsoever. And she gets hamstrung not only by a bad car, but by the fact that she, like you said, gets less than a half an hour of practice and she gets a qualifying session, which is 2 laps. How many laps can you actually get in? You know, I'm counting the warm-up lap. I'm counting the lap she comes off a pit road and gets up to speed.
Oh, yeah. 1 at-speed lap, yeah. But
Yeah.
2 laps. I mean, it's the process is so out of touch. They're just they're looking more, and I'm going to say it. They're looking from the sense of those 3 dreaded letters that have been towards the end of one administration to the start of the other one. Those 3 dreaded letters that are within the first handful of letters of the alphabet. DEI.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. It's so unfortunate, but that's what you got to like. What are we doing here?
Yeah. It's a major hurdle is what it is.
In the case in point, Kevin Hart made a fantastic point. He said, what are we doing? Because we basically throw a 4-time IndyCar champion out there and look like a monkey and a football having fun with each other.
Right.
Go
back and watch Days of Thunder.
Go back and watch Days of Thunder. You'll know what I'm talking about. He said that was not fair on Elio because it basically gave Elio a black eye.
Exactly. And at the same point in time, they did that to Elio Castroneves. They wouldn't approve Mike Wallace, who at least has experience in the Cup Series. Granted, not in this car, but he has experience.
Who has entered the gates of Daytona Victory Lane multiple times, people.
Exactly. The reasoning here is baffling because I don't know even if they know what their reasoning is.
So if they was decide to go back to a dirt race, all I could do is say, hey, here you go. Here's your money.
Exactly.
I want my license.
Yeah. I mean, if we can get a CRN logo up on the car with enough money on it, sure. I mean, you, me,
here.
As long as we can get the license to run in the Cup Series, we're good to go.
Yeah, I have hope. It gives me hope.
Yeah.
I mean, it gives me clear hope because if somebody that has never sat in a cup car in competition that did not go through the proper ladder system to get approved, but because she ran the Indy 500 and a couple IndyCar races last year, and she's made a handful of
Daytona.
Ran the ARCA race at Daytona. Okay, completely different animal there.
Oh, sure. Yeah. You can't tell me, even a novice could sit there and look at Phoenix and Daytona and say, wow, those are two very different racetracks.
But when you're driving two wildly different levels of stock car
Also true.
compared to a wildly different version of a race car known as an Indycar that is a third of the weight of a cup car that has 200 more horsepower than a cup car. Huge difference, people. Huge.
When this news broke last week, you sent me a text and said Cathrine Legge racing at Phoenix, and I said, which car? And you said Live Fast. Now I remember that now. And I sat and I looked at that for a moment or two, and I just stopped and I thought, and I finally I replied back, Rolling Roadblock. And again, this wasn't meant as a dig necessary to Cathrine Legge. This was meant as a dig a lot more to the 78 car, but in combination with the fact that Cathrine Legge, for as much talent as she's got, and she's got a hell of a lot more talent as a race car driver than I do, I can tell you that. But even as much talent as she's got, she's in a backmarker car and she has zero experience in that kind of car. She was going to be a rolling roadblock. And in watching the race, that's exactly what she was. It took her less than a full stage to go 3 laps down, just like that. You know, and I feel for her. I really do. Because she should be in a much better position. I would like to see her in a much better prepared car, number one.
Sure.
But number two, if you're going to put somebody, and again, Cathrine Legge, Ilio Castroneves, I don't care. Whoever it is, if you're willing to put these drivers who have zero experience into a Cup Series car for a race, for the love, would you open up a couple of practice sessions and give them an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon before you send them out there qualifying so that they can actually get acclimated to the car?
You give them, when you have somebody, when you have, excuse me, when you have that scenario, you officially implement a minimum 30-minute rookie practice. Nobody touches the racetrack but them.
Got to be at least that.
Nobody touches the track but them.
I'd be willing to go more than that, truth be told. Again, because these cars are that much more difficult to drive.
But and then the simple way is this right here. If you're going to make your initial start on a stock car, on a super speedway in this level of stock car, it is a minimum. If I'm sitting over the competition department and I'm going through this approval process and determining who's approved and who isn't approved, if you're going to do this right here, before your name enters on my entry list for the next set event, let's use the upcoming Jack Links 500 at that little place right down the road from where we're at. Okay. Let's use that. Before your name is even considered to be on that entry list, you have to formally submit your entry list to the said same event weekend that has the ARCA race.
Okay.
You have to, there is a no question about it. You have to finish the race unscathed and complete every lap.
So in this, let's say that what happened Sunday was an ARCA series race at Phoenix.
Which ARCA was at Phoenix on Friday night.
Right. And let's say that Cathrine was in it, and what happened to her in the Cup Series race on Sunday happened on Friday. In other words, she's coming off, what was that, turn two. And that car just gets out of control, and
Twice.
she hits another car.
Twice.
Okay. Does that, for you, under these rules,
nope,
does that preclude her from racing in the Cup Series race on Sunday?
You have to finish the ARCA race unscathed.
Okay.
Because
I was just asking for clarification on that.
Because the ARCA race was 150 laps.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically with half of the Cup Series racing.
Right.
All right. If you can finish all 150 laps unscathed on the lead lap in the same car that she competed in Daytona, the SPS Sigma Performance car was in Phoenix, was in contention for the win until Thad Moffitt said, not so fast, and took him in the wall. Said car was in contention. So let's back up here. Super Speedway. I don't care. OEP provisional, you can wad it up and throw it in the trash can for all I care.
Okay.
The way Elio looked like a pinball in an ARCA race, I wouldn't have approved him to run a Cup race.
Gotcha.
I would not have approved it. That is not a knock on his capability of driving in any said motorsports event. But
sure,
super speedways are a completely different technique and a completely different animal all in itself from a mental standpoint and a physical standpoint. You got to be on your A+ game for that.
Yeah. You and I got talking about this, and when we had the opportunity to do that driving experience out in Talladega, we were on the track all by ourselves. You and I weren't even able to get close to each other as a general rule to like try and draft and have a good time. So about the third lap of the 5 that we were in, I'm sitting purposely in the middle lane in turns 1 and 2 in Talladega. And, your mind doesn't wander necessarily because you're doing your best to maintain your speed, which, it was a nice little feather job to make sure that I didn't over rev it and hit the limiter, but you wanted to be right up against the limiter. So I'm not saying that my mind wandered, but I actually chose to take a moment to imagine being in the middle of the main pack at Talladega on race day in a Cup Series race, which means 36 guaranteed starters, 38, 39 probably starting a race. And that pack is probably 30 of those. Well, we'll say it's 39 starters. That pack is probably 30 of 39 starters. You'll have a few stragglers out back because their strategy is to wait and let the big one happen out in front of them. So about 30 cars are sitting there, and I'm sitting here thinking, I'm sitting in the middle lane. And if I'm in the middle, say I'm 15th on, I'm in 15th place right now. That means below me, I've got cars. Probably above me, I've got cars. I certainly got them in front and behind me. And I'm only doing 150 compared to their 180 to 190, maybe even 190 plus that they're doing on race day in that same situation. And I suddenly gained even that much more respect. I've always had respect for their ability to do that at Daytona and Talladega. Let me make that perfectly clear. But I gained even that much more respect because I was able to put myself in the car and visualize exactly all those forces that were going to be going on around me if I had been in their position.
Right.
It's huge. And I invite you to do the exact same thing if you get the opportunity. We're not certainly special in being able to go do this driving experience. Anybody can do it if you got the money. And I get it. Money is a situation that's not necessarily coming off of trees. But if you're a big NASCAR fan, I implore you, go to Atlanta, go to Talladega, go to Bristol, go to Darlington, go to Rockingham, wherever they're having a driving experience. Go do it. Go check it out. But while you're there, imagine yourself on that track with 35 to 40 other cars. And you'll suddenly gain even that much more respect for this. And to a certain extent, probably kind of a healthy caution flag should come up in your brain too, because you begin to realize all those forces that are starting to battle up against that car. You and me on a clean track at a Talladega 2.66 miles, we're not feeling the wind buffeting. At 190 miles an hour in the middle of a pack of 30 cars, you're getting bounced all over the place. And a cheaper way to kind of get a better feel for that, if you got a subscription to Max, go watch that in-car camera and just watch it throughout the course of the race. My wife, who is not a big passenger person anyway, she had to leave the room. She could not watch that because it kind of drove her crazy, realizing all of the different forces that were going on around you at a time when you are so close to the competitors, or the competitors are that close to you.
Right.
It's an amazing amount of respect. So again, we're not taking away anything from the driving talents of an Helio Castroneves, a Cathrine Legge, or any other driver who wants to try and get in and race in the Cup Series. They could come from F1 for all I care. You know, considered to be some of the most talented drivers on the planet. NASCAR is a different animal. And when you put them in a pack, like we see on a weekly basis at all these tracks, much less a Talladega or Daytona, it is a vastly different thing than going out there and racing one, maybe two guys when you're out on an F1 track on a Sunday afternoon, like they'll be at Australia this Sunday.
Yep.
So yeah, it's producer John has a good point. You can feel your car being buffeted around when either you get passed by or you pass a big rig on the interstate. Now multiply that out. Put your speed up to 190 and feel like you're going in between two big rigs. Then you start to have an idea of what these guys deal with on a regular weekly basis. It's not easy. And our biggest problem with Cathrine Legge's start wasn't the fact that she got the start. It was the fact that she did not have the prep time to be able to do anything with it, number one. And number two, she was in a car that never had a chance. Never had a chance.
Nope. Not even close.
So hopefully this doesn't sour on the NASCAR thing. Just she needs a lot more time practicing. And that's something that NASCAR needs to do. And I hate the fact that we have gone to the point where we practically don't practice at all anymore. I think that really has hurt things. In one way, has it helped? And the fact that they can't sit there and spend an hour in practice locking in the car to that particular track, it does throw a bit of a wild card situation where you really don't know who's going to win the race at the end of the race. You know, because the more time these guys get to learn the car, the more the cream will rise to the top, and the Hendricks and the Gibbs and the Penske's, they'll all win everything like they almost do now. But you don't get an opportunity for some of these smaller teams to actually be able to jump up there and claim an occasional win. The Trackhouse Racings of the world, no chance. RNK Racing, probably never a chance again. You know, those guys, they're never going to win if you always get that practice. But again, if you're going to get a Cathrine Legge, you're going to get an Helio Castroneves, you got to give them extra practice time because they don't know these cars.
Right. They don't.
I feel sorry for Cathrine Legge. I really do. I think she got a massively raw deal on this particular situation.
Yep.
All right. Sunday morning. I'm going to tease one thing in particular. Well, two, and both of them deal with television. Number one, Formula One has officially said we're not re-upping with ABC, ESPN at the end of the year. That means they need a new TV partner. We'll talk about one of those possibilities coming up on the Sunday Big Show. Number two, there's one driver in the NHRA in particular who's really unhappy with Fox. We'll tell you who the driver is, what it is that they said, and they said it on Fox's cameras on Sunday evening at the Gator Nationals. And you know what? He might have a point. So we'll talk about that and so much more. Join us, won't you? CRN Live, Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time. Should be all three of us. You'll be in studio. You're feeling a little better, right?
Should, yeah.
Okay. You've got something to show me anyway when it comes to iRacing because you just told me they finally updated the look of Talladega. I can't wait to see it, actually. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. We're looking forward to seeing you. And until then, thank you very much for checking us out here on this edition of Crossed Flags. Don't forget, subscribe right down there. Our thanks to producer John and producer Molly for making sure that all things are finalized and buttoned up. And on behalf of Matt Nicholson, I'm Steve West. We'll talk to you Saturday morning on The Big Show. Again, 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time. Join us then.
You've been listening to Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. For more content like this, Subscribe to CRN Live on YouTube, and you'll be set to catch the 2-hour live show every Saturday morning at 9 Eastern, 8 Central.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.